They did not need to shout in my face that I was not good enough. All it took was a cold signature on the termination letter and a polite handshake in front of the entire company. In that moment, I realized that those who once smiled at me could just as easily cast me aside like an expired product. My name is Cynthia Parker, 32 years old, once the Chief Strategy Officer of Luminate Creative, a leading emotional marketing agency based in Austin, Texas. 6 years ago, I joined Luminate when it was nothing more than a fledgling startup with 5 people crammed into a rented attic. Back then, the air still smelled of fresh paint, and my hands helped shape every early campaign, every first client, every fragile contract. I believed it was my second family, a place where hard work would be recognized, where I could build lasting relationships with clients and prove my real worth in a fiercely competitive industry. In those days, I worked as if every breath was tied to Luminate. Sleepless nights, last-minute contract signings, crisis management, manually correcting even the smallest errors in client proposals. Every successful project, every award Luminate received, bore traces of my effort. From late-night presentations to emotional marketing concepts that moved clients to tears. I never imagined a day would come when I would stand outside that office, looking at the lights from afar, feeling as if I were gazing into the life of someone else. The shift began when Anna arrived. Anna, my half-sister, the golden child in the eyes of our family. While I carved my path alone, disregarding the pursuit of personal branding, Anna, with her glittering degrees and expansive social network, walked into Luminate as if welcomed by a red carpet. At first, I was genuinely happy for her. I introduced Anna to the CEO, to major partners. I shared every strategy and vision I had nurtured over years. I believed that having family by my side would only make the company stronger. I was wrong. It did not take long before strategy meetings became fewer and fewer for me. My ideas were brushed aside without explanation. Anna quickly captured the attention of the leadership with polished presentations and social connections that I could not compete with. I never anticipated that the confidential strategic plans I had once shared with Anna would later be presented by her as her own achievements before the board. No one asked about my contribution. No one mentioned my name in the campaigns I had initiated. I tried to endure. I thought that as long as Luminate thrived, as long as real value was upheld, I could set aside my pride. But it all reached its breaking point during the third quarter meeting when the CEO announced a leadership restructuring. A long list of new positions was read out. Anna was named the new Chief Strategy Officer. My name did not appear in any role after the meeting. The CEO called me into his office. His eyes avoided mine. His voice was flat, as if reading from a script. He said Luminate needed fresh energy, that my working style no longer fit the company's creative direction, and that I should move on to seek new opportunities. Without anger or pleading, I quietly nodded and signed the prepared termination letter. As I walked out of the building, my heels tapping steadily on the cold stone floor, I knew I had lost more than a job. I had lost my faith in relationships I had worked so hard to build. I had lost faith in family, in kindness, in promises sworn never to be broken, because behind every signature, every decision made that day, were the shadows of the very people I once loved most. That evening, I sat alone in my small apartment. The coffee cup on the table had long gone cold. Streetlights outside cast pale streaks across the room. My phone buzzed relentlessly with hollow messages like, "Hang in there," or "This will be good for your future," or "Do not be too sad." Among them, a different message flashed from my mother. "Anna has just been promoted to director. You should congratulate her. Try to find a new job. Cynthia, Not everyone can be lucky forever. I put the phone down, feeling utterly hollow. Trust does not die from a grand betrayal, but from small, repeated cuts that bleed it dry without notice. That night, for the first time in years, I did not cry. I just sat silently in the dark, listening to the wind rustling outside the window, feeling the heavy stillness wrapping around me. I once believed I could endure any hardship as long as I had family and a career to hold on to. But when both turned their backs, a person does not shatter with noise, but quietly crumbles inside. I knew that from that moment on. I had hit rock bottom, and only I could decide how long I would stay there. In the early days after the fall, I let myself drift in a state between wakefulness and sleep, as if my body still resisted, but my spirit had long since surrendered. Every morning, waking up alone in the empty apartment, I felt as if all sounds around me were wrapped in a thick cloth, distant and muted. The old laptop on the kitchen table still held untouched documents, unfinished projects that no longer had a reason to be completed. Yet perhaps it was that very silence that slowly made me realize, if I kept sitting here, waiting for someone to recognize my true worth, I would sink deeper into oblivion. One afternoon, as the city lights flickered on, I stepped into a small coffee shop on the corner, a place where I had once closed deadlines during my days at Luminate, beside a cooling cup of cappuccino. I opened my laptop and let my hands wander through old files, beneath the proposals once rejected and the ideas once discarded. I found fragments of myself woven into every word. I realized that all this time, I had not merely worked for Luminate. I had built a treasure trove of knowledge whose value only I could fully understand. A thought slowly took shape, at first as faint as a trail of coffee steam, then gradually sharpening into clarity. I would no longer beg anyone for an opportunity. I would create it myself. I began my first steps in silence, as if sowing seeds into barren soil. During the day, I immersed myself in research about how emotional marketing trends were shifting after the pandemic, about small businesses yearning to connect with customers through genuine storytelling rather than hollow slogans. At night, I distilled all the lessons I had learned, the campaigns I had led, the knowledge forged through blood and tears. I named my new project Ember Consulting, like a tiny ember still glowing beneath ashes, needing only the right moment and the right breath to ignite into flame. The network I had neglected while drowning in loyalty to my old company now became my lifeline. Quietly, I sent messages to former collaborators, without complaint, without mention of betrayal, simply sharing that I was starting anew and hoping to walk beside them in a different way, one that honored true value on both sides. Most messages disappeared into silence. A few replied with polite encouragements, but some extended a cautious, genuine hand. The days that followed spun into a hurried rhythm. I began to receive small projects from local businesses that could not afford large agencies, but were willing to place trust in someone who would truly listen to their stories. At every client meeting, I reminded myself that this time, I was not building someone else's dream. I was building my own life. Not everything went smoothly. The first hard blow came on a Friday afternoon as I was preparing a pitch for an organic grocery chain. A brief email arrived, informing me they had chosen Luminate as their partner instead, under the familiar signature. I recognized the name David, Anna's fiancé, now serving as business development director at my former company. I knew exactly which materials David had once seen. I knew the very style of presentation Anna now used, because they were techniques I had once crafted by hand. That lost contract felt like a cold blade slicing into the fragile pride that had just begun to revive. I sat alone in my small room, the last light of the day stretching long across the wooden floor, my fingers tapping unconsciously on the table as if searching for an invisible anchor. I remembered the suffocating feeling of being dismissed, of seeing genuine value buried beneath polished performances. This time, I would not allow myself to collapse. I asked myself if they would conquer the market with fame and connections. Then what would be my weapon? The answer came sooner than I expected. I would win with sincerity. I would win by building lasting relationships with clients, where every brand story would be told with real emotion instead of campaigns crafted to sell a soul. I threw myself into studying storytelling techniques, modern emotional marketing models, and post-pandemic consumer psychology, night after night. I stayed up late, the glow of the laptop screen casting shadows over my hollowed face while my eyes grew brighter with each passing hour. I was no longer just doing marketing. I was rebuilding my faith in the very profession I once loved. A month later, I received a call from a small nonprofit supporting women entrepreneurs. They did not have a big budget, but they had an incredible story waiting to be told. I accepted almost without hesitation. The project lasted 4 weeks, during which I lived alongside those women, listening to their dreams, their failures, their struggles against rejection, and their relentless determination to rise again. When the campaign launched, it did not generate massive numbers or overwhelming revenue like those giant marketing projects, but it moved thousands of people to tears and drew hundreds of new sponsors. Ember Consulting, that tiny name, was mentioned for the first time on communication forums as an example of how emotional marketing could truly change the game. I sat alone in my familiar coffee shop, watching news notifications light up my phone screen, feeling my heart beat steadily and calmly. I knew the road ahead would still be long. I also knew there would be more obstacles and more attempts to block my way. But this time, I was no longer the naive Cynthia who believed true value would automatically be seen. I understood that to protect what I built, I needed to be stronger, more persistent, and most importantly, I had to walk on my own 2 feet without illusions, without waiting for anyone. Outside the window, the city lights stretched into shimmering trails across the night sky. I gripped my coffee cup tighter and took a deep breath. My story was only just beginning, and this time, I was the one holding the pen. There were mornings when I woke up feeling as if I were standing at the edge of a cliff, where even the lightest gust of wind could sweep away everything I had painstakingly built. Yet each time, I reminded myself that if I had dared to start over from nothing, there was no reason to fear the next waves. Ember Consulting continued to grow quietly, each small contract stacking like bricks, forming the first foundation of a new home. One day, while I was finishing a report for a loyal client, I received a message from Aunt Lisa, the only family member who still kept in touch after the storm. "Cynthia, have you seen the news?" she asked, stirring a vague sense of unease in me. Aunt Lisa sent a news link. As I clicked it open, a chill spread across my palms. Luminate was under investigation for plagiarizing a major corporate communication campaign. The initial details revealed that the original content, allegedly copied, came from a proposal created by a former employee whose identity had not yet been disclosed. I sat motionless in the sunlit kitchen, my mind blank. I recognized that proposal instantly. It bore the familiar marks of my work, from the way the problem was framed to how the content was developed. I vividly remembered those sleepless nights perfecting every line, every slide, only to have it discarded because Anna thought it lacked visual appeal. I never imagined they would later retrieve it, tweak a few details, and sign their names under it as if I had never existed. The news spread through the marketing world like an oil slick. Forums buzzed with discussions about professional ethics and internal turmoil at Luminate. David, now business development director, was dragged into the scandal as the one who had signed the contract with the corporation. Anna, holding the title of chief strategy officer, became a frequent target for media scrutiny whenever the company appeared in public. I felt no joy, no vindication, only a quiet sadness settling in my heart. They had not destroyed me with a single fatal blow, but with countless small cuts that seemed harmless at the time, cuts that now bled in their own hands as time passed. Ember Consulting welcomed more clients following the success of the nonprofit campaign. I started getting opportunities to work with high-tech startups seeking a different, more humane and sustainable approach to the market. One early autumn afternoon, as golden light painted the streets, I received an invitation to speak at a major marketing conference in Austin, a gathering of industry giants. At first, I wanted to decline, but something inside whispered that some confrontations could not be avoided forever. I accepted the invitation as a guest speaker, presenting on the topic of emotional marketing and the power of authenticity. On the day of the conference, I entered the vast hall wearing a simple yet elegant light gray suit. No one recognized me immediately. In their eyes, I was still an unfamiliar name, representing a small company that could not yet overshadow the giants who had long dominated the industry. But as I stepped onto the stage, under the full glare of the spotlight, I no longer felt fear. I spoke about how major brands had forgotten that customers do not just buy products, they buy emotions, they buy sincerity. I shared how a small firm like Ember Consulting had helped small businesses touch the hearts of their customers without million-dollar budgets. The presentation ended with a resounding applause. As I stepped off the stage, amidst handshakes and offers of collaboration, I caught a glimpse of Anna from across the room. She stood there, surrounded by the crowd, her gaze a mix of shock and resentment. Beside her was David, his face pale as if he had swallowed a nightmare. I knew then that they never imagined Cynthia Parker, the one they had discarded like useless debris, would make such a comeback, a rise they could no longer stop. In the days following the conference, Ember Consulting experienced an explosion of new clients. I received an invitation to consult for a large-scale community project, leading campaigns for dozens of local brands. I could not deny that part of my drive still stemmed from the betrayal and deep wounds left by my family and former company. But now, I was no longer acting out of a need to prove anything to them. I was acting to protect the dream I had rekindled with tears and failure. One afternoon, as I was signing a contract with a new partner in a quiet cafe, my phone rang, seeing Aunt Lisa's name flash on the screen. I answered gently. Her voice was soft but urgent. "Cynthia, are you okay? I heard that Luminate is about to shut down its main branch in Austin." I remained silent for a long moment, my eyes gazing out at the darkening autumn sky. "I am okay. Auntie, truly okay," I replied. It was not the kind of victory I had once imagined, nor a loud triumphant revenge. It was the quiet collapse of a system that had long since rotted from within, waiting only for time and its own missteps to crumble it piece by piece. I did not have to push it. I did not have to prove anything further. The price of devaluing true worth, the price of building success on deceit, was inevitable decay. That night, as the city fell into sleep, I sat by the window, golden lamplight spilling over pages filled with plans for the future. I knew the journey ahead would still be long, filled with twists, doubts, and challenges. But unlike before, I no longer walked in the dark with a fragile heart. I walked with feet accustomed to endurance and eyes trained to face the truth without illusions. Outside the window, the autumn wind spun golden leaves under the streetlights. I smiled faintly, my heart calm. In this world of emotional marketing, where true value had once been so easily lost, I chose to become a storyteller, not to sell products, but to build lasting relationships and craft stories that could truly touch people's hearts. There are moments in life when you do not realize you have changed until you stand before a crossroads that once filled you with fear. For me, that moment arrived on a gloomy afternoon when Austin was cloaked under a light. Steady rain, the sound of raindrops on the roof blending with the steady beating of my heart. After the successful campaign, Ember Consulting was no longer an obscure name, but I knew that to rise to the top, I needed a bigger leap, an opportunity powerful enough to shift my position beyond small, accumulated projects. That opportunity came in the form of a closed bidding process organized by a high-tech corporation expanding into education and training. I knew the project would attract every major and minor agency in the city, including Luminate. Even as they struggled through internal storms, I spent hours in front of the computer screen, analyzing project requirements, studying the target audience, and exploring the latest trends in emotional marketing. I understood better than anyone that if I followed the textbook approach, Ember Consulting would stand no chance against the giants. I needed something different, something that would not only meet expectations, but reach deep into the hearts of the audience. The sleepless nights returned, but this time, they did not bring exhaustion or helplessness. They carried a silent excitement, as if I were laying the foundation for a castle, each brick infused with hope and determination. I decided not to advertise with flashy words or empty promises. I would tell a story about ordinary people using technology to overcome adversity, about how education and creativity could open new doors for those left behind. On the day of the proposal submission, heavy rain poured down. I walked into the corporate building, raindrops spotting my coat, my hand gripping the file tightly. In the waiting lounge, I spotted Anna and David standing together, impeccably dressed with cold expressions. David glanced at me, a smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. I did not avert my eyes, nor did I lower my head. I stood still, as calm as the rain outside washing away the dust of the past. The proposal presentation took place in a closed meeting room. I was not allowed to see how others performed, and no one revealed the panel's reactions. All I could do was trust the story I had told and believe in the truth that emotional marketing was not a trick, but a bridge between souls. The days waiting for the results felt longer than I had imagined. I continued my regular work, signing new contracts, nurturing sustainable relationships, but deep inside, a small flame burned quietly, waiting for its moment to ignite. A week later, I received a call from the corporation's representative. The voice on the other end was calm, but could not hide the excitement. We have chosen Ember Consulting for this educational project, not just because of the feasibility of the campaign, but because the story you told truly touched the hearts of every member of the panel. I thanked them with a steadier voice than I thought possible, then sank into my chair, my eyes burning with emotion. It was not the joy of winning a race. It was a silent affirmation that true value still had a place in this world, that those once betrayed and cast into darkness could still step into the light without having to compromise who they were. News of Ember Consulting winning the bid spread quickly across the media. Newspapers wrote about a young company defeating renowned agencies with a humane and different approach. Marketing forums buzzed with discussions about a new phenomenon. Many small and medium businesses reached out to me, hoping to find the empathy and guidance they had long been searching for. And while my name appeared more and more in professional conversations, Luminate's name became increasingly tied to scandals without resolution. One late evening, as I was reviewing my schedule for the upcoming week, my phone vibrated. Aunt Lisa was calling, her voice soft but layered with meaning. Cynthia, Anna has just been suspended by the board from her position as Chief Strategy Officer. They are continuing investigations into the allegations surrounding campaign copyright issues. I simply replied, "I understand," before hanging up. Inside, not a single ripple stirred. I knew this was not the end for Anna or David, nor was it the complete collapse of my former company, but they were the first cracks, the kind that no amount of PR articles or old media tricks could mend. They had traded trust for superficial glitter. They had forgotten that in the world of emotional marketing, people might be attracted by appearances once, but they stay only for authenticity, and when trust is lost, all that remains is a sandcastle waiting for the inevitable tide. I looked out the window. The city blazed bright against the night sky like a living map stretched across the horizon. In that moment, I knew I was ready, no longer the quiet builder hidden in the shadows, no longer the one picking up broken pieces. I had become the storyteller of my own life, speaking with a clear voice and walking with steady steps. And this story, it had only just begun. There are victories that do not need to be announced with applause or champagne. They come in silence, like the light filtering through thick curtains after a long night. When Ember Consulting officially signed a long-term contract with the tech corporation, I did not throw a celebration party, nor did I post any proud announcements on social media. I simply gave myself an ordinary evening, brewing a cup of mint tea and sitting by the window watching the trails of car lights sweep across the small street below. My heart filled with a nameless peace. I knew I had truly made a remarkable comeback, but this time, it was not to prove anything to anyone. It was simply to live fully with the true values I had once nearly lost. The success of Ember Consulting was not a loud explosion, but a quiet, unstoppable tide. Local businesses, community projects, and then even small and medium brands came to us, one after another. They were not looking for an agency that merely chased numbers. They were seeking a partner who could listen, who could tell stories with heart, who could turn emotional marketing into a real bridge that touched souls. Every signed contract was not just a business transaction, but a bond I built with kindness and sincerity. Meanwhile, the news about Luminate grew worse. Internal investigations revealed more scandals involving idea theft, manipulated reports, and abuses of power within the company. Anna, once reigning like a queen in that world of glitter, was forced to resign. David quietly left as well, distancing himself from the mounting criticism flooding professional forums. Luminate, once the pride of the local marketing scene, became a name spoken with regret and disdain. I learned all these things, not through the news, but through scattered messages from old colleagues, from Aunt Lisa, from those who once ignored me in the company corridors. Yet I felt no gloating, no satisfaction at their downfall, only a quiet sadness, like watching an old house finally collapse after years of meaningless resistance. This was not my victory. It was simply the inevitable result when trust had been broken too many times. One weekend afternoon, as I was preparing materials for an upcoming conference, the doorbell rang. Through the small glass panel, I saw my mother and father standing on the porch, their faces awkward and tense. I opened the door and invited them in with a calm gesture. We sat across from each other in the sunlit living room, the distance between us stretched by all the unspoken words. My mother spoke first, her voice trembling slightly. We heard about your company. Everyone in the family is surprised, truly proud. I merely smiled faintly, saying nothing. My father cleared his throat, his eyes revealing a shame he could not fully hide. Anna has had a hard time, and we are thinking of selling the house, moving somewhere smaller. Life is not as easy as it used to be. I nodded, showing neither reproach nor mockery. I knew they had not come just to congratulate me. The silence lingered until my mother placed a small envelope on the table. We know you are busy, but if you can, could you help a little? Like you used to, she said. I looked at the envelope, knowing it likely contained documents needing a signature or some financial assistance. I lifted my teacup and took a slow sip, feeling completely at peace. There was no old pain, no lingering sense of obligation, only the clarity of someone who finally understood the boundary between love and blind sacrifice. I will help, I said, my voice as calm as an autumn lake, but this time there will be a clear contract, transparent terms, no more silent assumptions, no more exploiting goodwill. My mother paled slightly, and my father bowed his head quietly. They nodded, reluctantly, but with no other choice. I knew they had not only lost unconditional support, but also had to face the reality that the daughter they once treated as a backup plan was now the one setting the terms. As they left, I leaned against the doorframe, watching their figures disappear under the fading sunlight. No hatred, no sorrow, only a profound peace. I no longer needed their acceptance, nor their belated recognition. I already had the most precious validation, the one from within myself. The following month, Ember Consulting was honored at the local marketing awards, receiving the prize for the most innovative communication company of the year. I stepped onto the stage to accept the award, the lights shining across the vast auditorium, amid the thunderous applause. I smiled, a smile not meant for the crowd, but for the girl who once sat alone in a dark apartment, holding on to a tattered dream no one believed could be mended. That evening, back in my small apartment, I opened my laptop and began writing the first lines of the book I had always dreamed of. It was not a book about revenge. It was about the journey of finding oneself again after betrayal, about how to turn the most painful failures into lasting strength. I wrote as if speaking to an old friend, each word gentle but deeply felt. Outside the window, the deep night sky was scattered with stars. I sat there for a long time, listening to my heartbeat blend into the perfect stillness. If anyone asked me what the greatest reward was from all that I had been through, I would not say fame or money or dazzling victories. I would simply say, it was freedom. Freedom from the expectations of others. Freedom from the obsession with recognition. Freedom to be myself, without asking for permission, without bowing, without fear. There are acts of revenge that do not need banners or fanfare. They are simply about living better, happier, more successfully, without any need for explanations. And the most beautiful victories are not when the betrayers fall, but when you look back and realize you have walked through it all and still kept your heart whole.